All right, so to talk about forefoot and rear foot posting as it equates to our order form and what that means for the final product of the device is it's important to keep in mind that forefoot is relational to the rear foot and the rear foot is relational to the ground. So if the rear foot is posted at vertical, it is going to be perpendicular to the ground. So in this illustration here, the rear foot perpendicular to ground would be represented by this vertical solid line. Okay, so if we balance forefoot to rear foot root style, which is balancing the forefoot to 90 degrees in relationship to the rear foot, and then we post the rear foot at, let's say, 4 degrees of varus, that's what this illustration here on the left is indicating that. So we post the forefoot perpendicular to the rear foot as represented by the solid line, but then we're going to offset the rear foot. We're going to invert it 4 degrees. And this dotted line here that represents the relationship of the forefoot to the ground. You can still see that it's perpendicular to the rear foot, but now that the rear foot has been shifted 4 degrees, the forefoot has also now been shifted 4 degrees relative to the ground. So forefoot is completely dependent on what the rear foot is doing. If the foot is captured in the desired position and there's a forefoot offset, whether inverted or everted, relative to the rear foot, like we have in this cast here, we have a slight, it's hard to get the angle right, but we have a slight forefoot valgus. It's slight and subtle, but you can tell that the first metatarsal head is higher than the fifth metatarsal head. So on the order form, if we were to select foot captured in desired position, we will maintain that forefoot offset, that forefoot eversion in this case, when we make the device. And what we'll do is we'll post the forefoot intrinsically at whatever this angulation is. It looks pretty slight to me. I would guess it's like 1 or 2 degrees, but we would maintain that relationship with the device. So we could post the the rear foot, to vertical, and the forefoot would have this offset of whatever is captured in the cast. If we wanted to specify, like let's say that we overcorrected this cast and we actually want to accommodate more forefoot valgus for whatever biomechanical reason, what we would do is we would unselect foot captured in desired position. We would not balance the forefoot to the rear foot because we don't want the forefoot perpendicular to the rear foot. Instead, what we would do is select which type of forefoot posting we want. Let's say we wanted met wedge, which would extend underneath the metatarsal heads themselves. Choose valgus, as in this case the foot is in slight valgus, and then select the angle that we want to be achieved, and this angle is relative to the rear foot. So a 4 degree valgus met wedge would be keeping the rear foot at vertical, but maintaining an angle of the rear foot relative to this vertical line. So it would be a combination of the dotted line for the forefoot, representing the forefoot, matched with the solid line representing a vertical rear foot. So the rear foot is relative to the ground, forefoot is relative to the rear foot. If, just as one extra example, if we were to put an extrinsic forefoot varus posting of 4 degrees and an extrinsic varus posting of 4 degrees in the rear foot, what we'd have is we would have this 4 degree offset from vertical for the rear foot, but we would actually have this dotted line extending another 4 degrees above where the current dotted line is, because this would be perpendicular to the rear foot, but then a 4 degree offset relative to the rear foot would actually elevate the forefoot even more relative to the ground. If this doesn't make sense, let me know. Hopefully this clarified the relationship, or how a forefoot posting is determined, and what it's set against, which would be the rear foot.